just so these people can make their escape under cover of night. I don't remember whether it's said of the firstborn of Egypt that they were members of the Al-Qaeda organization or whatever fantastic allegation you made against the Amalekites, who are so thoroughly destroyed that we'll never know anything about them, like the Albigensians. We hardly know what the heresy was because of what a thorough job the Pope did. See how the Christians love each other, by the way, on these occasions. What did the firstborn of Egypt ever do to this loving God, that they should have their lives taken so his chosen people can run away? What's moral about believing this? What morally normal person will say they want the destruction of children for their redemption in Canaan? Professor Stephen Weinberg puts it quite well, I think. He says, in a morally normal universe situation, people of goodwill will do the best they can, and people of ill will, psychopathic types, wicked, evil types, will do the worst. They will do wicked things. If you want to get good people to do wicked things, you need religion. What do I mean by that? I mean to say that when they see a newborn baby arriving in their life, if anyone's ever thought, even myself, well, maybe there is something to this. Look at the perfection of this little bundle. Look at the little indentations, all of that, in the fingertips. The most, leathery old cynic like myself can have these feelings. We're not total strangers to the transcendent and the numinous, But they said, I tell you what, though, before we go any further, we need to get a sharp knife or a stone from somewhere and start hacking away at the genitalia of this little bundle. Because if we don't, we won't be doing God's will. Now, no moral person would do such a thing unless they thought it was divinely warranted. No moral person, I say, would show contempt and disgust about the female birth canal, as all religions invariably do, and about activities related to it, I may say, in both directions. Revulsion from it, disgust from it, scorn for it, and for all other forms of sexual congress. There seems to be a dread underlying all of this, a dread about the genitalia, a horror of women, a horror of their monthly effusions, a disgust, as I say, for their vaginas, that I don't find healthy. But it seems to me, in two senses, man-made. One, mammal-made, and two, made so that men can subordinate women, which seems to be a consistent finding in all religions. You will know that the pious Jew has to begin every day saying, God is to be thanked for not making me a woman or a Gentile. That's not moral preaching. No one goes around talking nonsense like that unless they think they have divine permission for it. Religion is therefore, yes, a poison, because it spoils even righteous acts. Now, I don't blame you for not reading all my book, and I certainly don't blame you for not quoting all of it. And by the way, we will just have to have a wager on what you said in yours, and I'll stand to my part of it. But I do spend a bit of time on this question of virtue. When a Muslim cab driver, who found a great deal of my money and my wife's money on the back seat of his taxi, and knew very well he could have kept it, we had no means of finding him, went to the trouble he did to bring it back and give it to us and say, well, that's his Muslim duty, wouldn't even accept when I tried to give him 10%, because I knew probably that would be an insult. Really, because it was his Muslim duty. First, I want to make 2 points. One is, I think that's trying to prove too much. I don't think it's at all to the credit of the Prophet Muhammad, or the Quran, or the Archangel Gabriel, who dictated the nonsense of the Quran to him, that this happens. I think the guy should have done what I would do. You find someone else's money, you take it back to him. If you want to be thought of as a moral person, you just do that. You've done the right thing. It's enough. What is this saying? It's a religious duty. It seems to me to pollute the integrity of the thing. The second is, if you use that to prove that Islam is a good influence, you'll have a lot of work still ahead of you. A great deal of work. All your work is still to come, as it is in your invocations of charity and philanthropy. You've proved absolutely nothing at all. You haven't even suggested a defense of religion as a moral or ethical thing. I think that's all I need to say for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Finally, to conclude, Mr. Olasky, Dr. Olasky.
Well, you've given us, Christopher, a lot of excellent lines from your book, and I recommend it to people. I mean, it's witty.
Very handsome of you.
Yeah, it's well written. I think sticking with it and writing as you do, I mean, does show a certain virtue, although you may not like that term. And that's one of the things I've tried to point out in the book you refer to, that Lots of things are important in war and in debate, and one thing that's very important is character and virtue and leadership. People will follow those they admire, and often won't others. So all these things are important to take account of. But I'm troubled here by the way that you speak, and you continue to speak with absolute certainty about all these things. And in fact, if our existence is random, it's all random, why should we trust what you say at all? Why should we believe it at all? It's a random utterance. You could do something entirely different half an hour from now. It's all random. We could talk more about a lot of the points you raised. The Amalekites, of course, were not wiped out. If you're familiar with the book of Esther, Haman is one of their descendants. And actually in Jewish lore, Hitler was a descendant, and so forth. So, there are a lot of things we could talk about. I mean, you say this is madness. You're generalizing about all religions again, men subordinating women and so forth. Let me just talk about that. And this actually ties in with this whole question you raised about whether any of these scriptures could possibly be believable, that perhaps they were all written as propaganda booklets. Let's look at the Gospels. If they were just propaganda, their authors were really idiots for giving women a vital role in the founding of religion. They showed women as the first witnesses to the empty tomb. That would just add to suspicion as to whether Christ truly rose from the dead. The positive view of women that you see in the New Testament is so different from a negative one that dominated some of the other cultures around them. There's just so much here. The precision and specific detail. I'll mention one thing that appeals to me as a journalist in the Gospels. There's been a long-running debate about whether they were written pretty soon after Jesus, within the first several decades, or whether they were written much later. 5 years ago, I remember an account when the Monitor, the USS Monitor from the Civil War, was pulled up from the ocean bottom. And experts were surprised to find braces on the gun turret that were undocumented by all the literature at the time. People thought they knew pretty much about how the Monitor had been put together. They found these braces. They found mustard bottles where the crew had eaten. Now, if we found in some musty library a document asserting the crew had added some braces and had also braced their taste buds by pouring mustard on otherwise inedible biscuits, then we'd be much more likely to say, this sounds like a manuscript from 1870, rather than something written 100 years afterwards, when all that had been forgotten. Same thing with the Gospel. There's amazing specific detail in there that adds to the credibility. And same deal with the Bible overall. I mean, your attacks, it's interesting that you're rising in the bestseller list. I congratulate you, but these attacks are nothing new. They were common in what's called the golden age of free thought in the late 9th century. Robert Ingersoll was a leading figure within the Republican Party at the time, and he was probably the leading orator in America. And he was also, in his own words, an implacable enemy of Christianity. You would share a lot with him. He called God an eternal fiend. He held God in abhorrence and contempt. He attacked God's infinite malice as infinite lie. This is in the late 9th century. And he predicted, as did lots of others, the imminent demise of religion in general, or Christianity in particular. And he said things similar to what Christopher Lee Wright, that when religious groups had an educational monopoly, it was hard to mount an attack on the concept of revelation and miracles, but here's what he wrote. Now that religion's monopoly has been broken, it's within the compass of any human being to see those evidences and proofs as the feeble-minded inventions that they are. So anyone can see that's feeble-minded. Well, what's happened? I mean, why is Christianity so strong in the U.S. now? Why is it expanding rapidly in Africa and South America, and especially in China? My wife and I were there last year. It is like wildfire. To answer that, I think we need to turn your accusation on its head. It used to be that atheists could talk about the unique evil of religious dictatorships, and no one could show that the problem was broader than religion because we didn't have a track record of secular dictatorships. Now we do. Thought experiment. Imagine that in the 20th century, in the biggest country by land area, also the biggest country by population, those two countries, let's say that leaders were able to knock off Christianity and teach atheism in all the schools. Would things get better? Well, you might think, okay, we don't have to do a thought experiment. We have actually the historical evidence, the Soviet Union, China. And they did establish atheism, and the results were not particularly pretty. And I'm not bringing up this evidence to say that